Vigil for Ukraine. And we're honored to have with us President Guy.
How are you?
Pretty good.
Good.
Thank you for coming. This event is organized by many from the Morgantown community that includes not only Ukrainians, but also Americans, Canadians, French, and others. We even have the support of many Russian Morgantowners. Our hope is for peace and victory of democracy over a totalitarian and genocidal Russia that started and continues this terrible war. Ukraine will win because we have the support and bravery of individuals as well as the support of all the people and all the democracies of this planet. Yet the glory and freedom of Ukraine are not dead. This is the first line of the Ukrainian anthem, and we would like you to join us, if you know the words, or pay respects.
Усміхнеться доля, згинуть наші вороженьки, як роса на сонці, запануємо ми, браття, у своїй стороні. За нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького роду. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу. Що ми браття козацького роду.
Thank you. And now please bow your heads in a moment of silence for civilians and defenders of Ukraine killed in this war. Glory to Ukraine. Slava Ukraini.
Слава Україні!
We would like to give floor to Christina, and she will have the opening word for this event.
Good afternoon. I hope it was good in Ukraine and the war was over. But no. Russian soldiers are still killing civilians and children. They are still raping women and children. They continue to ruin our beloved cities and spread propaganda in the effort to erase our centuries-old history. The world has pledged to never again permit massacre or genocide. On February 24th, the word never was erased, shot and bombed by hundreds of missiles at 4 a.m., which woke up entire Ukraine. We heard terrible explosions. We heard again. Putin's Russian army has shelled those survivors whose families were executed in 1941 by Nazis. Today, we are here to remember the deliberate massacre in Bucha, the horrors of Mariupol, the destruction of Kharkiv, Lugansk, Odessa, and other cities. We are here to remember Ukrainian heroes. We are here to glorify Ukraine and pray for the people of Ukraine and for the soldiers. Ukrainian soldiers are fighting for their land, family, and for freedom. Ukrainian people value freedom more than themselves. This is true devotion, endurance, and faith. And we share the same values. We are here also to remember who we are. We are Ukrainians, we are Americans, and we are people from other nations. But first and foremost, we are here to remember that we are people. First of all, one of the most painful emotions to experience is not anger, hatred, not even a disappointment. It is to observe human suffering and pain. And they want to silence our people forever. But we will show Putin that we are louder than ever. Maybe it doesn't get easier, but through it, we get stronger. My mother told me that when I was a child. Finally, we are here to remember that the war is not over, and Ukraine needs your support. And I want to thank everybody for coming and being here with us today. Thank you for your continuous effort, for your help, for your compassion.
Thank you, Christina. Christina Pelcher is a mountaineer, a student of WVU. And the next speaker is also a mountaineer, Slava Arkiman. He's professor of mechanical and aerospace engineering.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here with us tonight. I am pleased to see President Guy, all our Morgantown community. You brought your hearts with you and Ukrainian symbolic, which means that all good people are a little bit Ukrainian today. All good people stand with Ukraine for the last 75 days. It's important. And you know, today, May 9th, it's really a special day. It used to be a special day for decades until Russia spoiled it. It was Victory Day. You know, it was time when Americans, Ukrainians, Russians, and 50 more nations fight and defeated fascist Nazis Germany. They fled concentration camps like Auschwitz, Buchenwald. They fled Europe and the entire world. And after that, they told never again. And during difficult time of Cold War, they kept peace because they knew what it meant. But this generation, that never again generation, passed away. And the ancestors in Russia say that we can repeat. And they are repeating it now. They are repeating right away. You know, as a Jewish guy myself, I never liked attributes like Hitler, Nazi, Holocaust. It looks like it's real evil. It's something terrible. It's something from the past that would never happen again. But unfortunately, it's time to compare. Qualitatively, if not quantitatively. What happens in Bucha, in Mariupol, in Ukrainian cities? Let me tell you about it. Just imagine, you have heard about the story about small town of Bucha. It's a suburb near Kyiv. It's a place like Morgantown, maybe small, maybe like Fairbank. Half of population managed to flee, but others remained and were tortured, were executed. Just imagine, in such a small place, 9 teenager girls appeared pregnant after they were raped. Imagine. So how many other women were impacted? And men were impacted. 300 or 400 people were killed, and they were found with bullets in their heads with roped hands. It happens nowadays. And all these numbers are small as compared to what happened in Mariupol, which we know as Stalingrad plus Leningrad plus Dresden all together at the same time. It's almost destroyed now. It was 500,000 populated city, and it still keeps resisting for 75 days now. Still there is a Azovstal plant which is resisting. And you don't know how many people are killed there, how many civilians. Some people say 20,000, but some people say 100,000. But By my estimation, more than about 100,000 Ukrainians already killed, and it's still going on. So that first lesson we learned in these 75 days. People did not expect it in 21st century. But second lesson was unexpected that Ukraine managed to resist and fight, and Ukraine does really excellent. People assume that Ukraine would collapse in 72 hours, but in 75 days. And Ukraine managed to resist and even win. We hope for this. It should be. It will win, but it takes effort and it needs support. And otherwise, I would say otherwise, if Ukraine collapsed, all Ukraine will be one big butcher now. And let me go even more. Saying something more terrible. Unless Ukraine decides to be one big Mariupol, maybe all East Europe would be like one big butcher. Luckily, something good happened. And in about 2 weeks, Russian army was almost stopped. And they escaped from north part of Ukraine. And they try and keep invading in the east and south part. They occupied something, but they don't penetrate much. So one good thought thing that people learned, that Russia is not so strong as expected. Its army is outdated, corrupted, demoralized, and not well organized. And when people realize these three things, I think we all recognize now that Putin can be overthrown and removed. It's possible, but help is needed for this. It's possible. People realize now it's not just a local Ukrainian-Russian conflict. It's not a question of some territories or some language or some other questions. Ukraine used to live without territory, but Ukraine would not survive if Putin is still in power. It's impossible. You cannot believe him, you cannot negotiate it. He should be removed, and that's what is happening, and people should realize that. Now, please realize that it will cost something, but the more it goes on, the harder price will be. You already pay some price. When you go to gasoline station, you pay twice as compared to February or about. But the longer it goes on, you pay more and more, because just an example that you know that Ukraine is the main exporter of wheat, of grains, of sunflower, as we see it here. And what happened now is that Black Sea ports are blocked, and it's really questionable how harvesting will happen this year if Ukrainians can plant something. And in occupied land, actually Russians are stealing grain. They already stole about 1 million tons, something like this. So basically, in terms of calories, Ukraine feeds about 400 million people over the world. So it will be huge impact later. And some people in African countries might die from hunger. In the US, hopefully not, but your meal plan will cost twice more if this is the case. So they are stupid the way. Please realize that Ukraine should win, but victory is not when Ukrainians kill more Russians and vice versa. It's not a football game. Victory means that Ukrainians should not kill somebody to survive. Okay? That's the main point. That's something that people know. You ask why people should pay this price, why you should be impacted here. Well, we were very lucky for decades. For 8 decades, we invested in stem cells, in cancer treatments, in COVID vaccine. We want our children to be doctors, lawyers, because they are well paid, because life costed a lot. Laws costed a lot, and otherwise people were punished. But everything has changed on February 2024. Everything has changed. You know now the treatments means nothing, only brute force plays a role. And life costs nothing unless it can be defended. So now we should invest in missiles. We should invest in peace how it was before. That's what is happening. That is right. You know, it started 8 years ago when Putin occupied Crimea with the idea that Crimea used to be Russian. Now he suggests that Ukraine used to be Russian. You know, many parts used to be Russian. Poland, Finland, and Alaska, and Fort Ross in California. Do you want Bucha there? It's not a joke, just a clarification. Exactly. So that's why we are here today. And Ukraine needs heavy weapons, needs helicopters, planes, because Russia still dominates in sky. And it's the only way to survive. And I'm thankful for all you are here, and please do what you can do. Act whatever you can act. Please donate, please talk to people. Please vote tomorrow at primaries. Please talk to your senators and congressmen. The international community, talk to your friends in other countries. The more you do, the more you care about it, the faster you will end this disaster. So thank you very much. And I want to say just in summary that as a Ukrainian, I don't want Ukraine to fight alone. And now I see it's not the case anymore. Help is underway. And as American, well, we want peace. But if this is third world war, like people say, I hope not. But if it's the case, I want this country to win, not be defeated. And key point here to recognize, it's not just military questions. There are many kind of ways, maybe economic, trade, whatever. People should recognize this global issue, social perspective. And as a person who spent many years in Russia, I don't want Putin to retreat until Kamchatka, until last Russian is killed. I want to see post-Putin Russia and visit it. But Putin is a broken tooth which should be removed. No way to sustain this. Please understand. He changed his mind every month. He may want to sign some agreement today, but in the months he will change his mind. If he wins, he will continue. It's definitely so. And basically, you cannot go back to the state of how it was on February 23. Not anymore. It should be removed. That's the only way to have peace on this world. So thank you again. Slava Ukraini.
His family is from Vinica, part of place where my family is from. And talking about my family, the next son will be introduced by my wife. Valeria Gritsenko is associate professor of School of Medicine.
Like we're going to sing a song that's called "Їхав Козак за Дунай." It translates as "The Cossack Road Beyond the Danube." And it's one of the most famous Ukrainian songs. It was written in 18th century by Semyon Klimovsky. He was a Ukrainian philosopher, poet, and a Cossack. And Cossacks are fighters, Ukrainian fighters that defended Ukrainian lands in those years. And now the lyrics comprise a conversation between a Cossack and his girlfriend. The Cossack is leaving to fight, and of course the girlfriend doesn't want him to go. So this song became famous all over the world. As Shona Minka, it was translated in German, and Beethoven has a version of it. In the United States, Spike Jones recorded a swing version of Minka in the 1940s.
Їхав козак за Дунай, сказав дівчино, прощай, ти конику вороненький, неси та гуляй. Пості, пості, козаче, твоя дівчина плаче, як ти мене кидаєш, тільки подумай.
Лучше було не ходить, лучше було не любить, лучше було хай не знать, чим тепер забувать. Вийшла руки заломивши і тяженько заплакавши, як ти ж мене покидаєш, ти ж не подумай. Білих ручок не ламай, ясних очі не стирай, мене з війни і славою к собі ожидай. Лучше було не ходить, лучше було не любить, лучше було хай не знать, чим тепер забувать.
Не хочу я нікого, тільки тебе одного. Ти забудь тут ні миленький, а все пропадай. Стиснув козак на коня, оставайся здорова, як на зміну, то вернуся через 3 года.
Лучше було не ходить, лучше було не любить, лучше було хай не знать, чим тепер забувать.
We have the next speaker, Reverend Dr. Westberg.
Good evening. So last time we gathered, I mentioned that my ancestors came out of Zaporozhye, Russia, Ukraine, pardon me, wow, about 100 years ago. No, actually they would have said that. So I left people, I sleep with the impression that I'm Ukrainian. And I think it's worth telling the story a little better, just to help us all understand how complicated life is sometimes. About 250 years ago, Catherine the Great of Russia sent people to my good German ancestors up in Germany, saying, "Hey, look, I got some empty land down in Ukraine. It's just sitting there, and there's nobody there." And they said, "Well, Sure, right? I mean, did they ask questions? No, probably not, because who would, right? So they went, and sure enough, there was empty land. And they didn't ask questions, and they didn't hear the stories of the Ukrainian people who used to live there and now didn't anymore, because Catherine the Great's people had come, soldiers had come, and simply tossed them off their land. So for 150 years, my good German ancestors lived in Ukraine. They thought of it as Russia. They thought of themselves, though, as German people. They never learned the Ukrainian language. They never assimilated at all. They never integrated at all. They were Germans who happened to be living in, well, Russia, as far as they were concerned. And then 100 years ago, things got a bit ugly because of, well, the First World War and the Revolution and all of this sort of things. So they picked up and they moved. They heard about, guess what? In the United States and in Canada, there's empty land again. Nobody there at all of these beautiful prairies. Just nobody there. And they asked exactly the same amount of questions they asked the previous time, which was 0. And so they didn't care, honestly, about the stories of the natives who used to live on that land and who thrived on that land for thousands of years. And so they came to Canada and the United States and settled here and worked really hard at not integrating again, although it just sort of became tricky after a while, which is why I'm speaking in English to you today. Part of the reason I tell you this story is just to remind us all that when it comes to fighting imperialism, we in North America have like 0 credibility in the rest of the world. Now when we say, oh yes, we are against countries attacking each other for land or whatever, the rest of the world just shakes their head and goes, oh, those poor Americans, they don't know nothing, do they? And they look at us because it's not just because of the native situation, which is an ongoing reality, right? Here we are at West Virginia University, and as far as I know, at least, the native population has never ceded this land or been compensated for it. And it's not just because of slavery, and it's, you know, but it's like Afghanistan and Iraq and Iran and, you know, Sudan and Somalia and Libya and Liberia, and it just gets to be depressing. So this is an important time. This is an important time to stand up with the people of Ukraine and say no more. But it only works if we continue this, that when our government says, oh yes, their imperialism bad, our imperialism good, we also stand up and say no. No to the next Afghanistan, no to the next Iraq, no to the next Syria, no to the ongoing struggles in Somalia and Sudan and Liberia and Libya, and it just goes on and on and on. And we won't individually stop these things, but we are still responsible for our actions. We are still responsible for what we do in response to the imperialism of Russia and the United States. So I encourage you, right, to do what our Ukrainian brothers and sisters are asking us to do, right? But don't stop there. When the next war comes up, be against it too. Amen.
Thank you. The next presentation is a flute duo. This is a WU flute duo by Ethan Nylander and Juan Carlos Tavares.
Hi everyone, I'll just be playing a traditional Ukrainian folk song.
And in these difficult times, Ukraine needs help. And we've heard this message from many people today. We have a lot of efforts here in Morgantown where people would devote their time and efforts to different causes. And it would be good to hear a bit about that in detail. The first person to talk about our efforts here in Morgantown is Professor Lisa DeBartolome.
Thanks everyone for coming out on this beautiful evening. It's much better than the event that we had in March when we got blown away by the cold air. But our suffering that night was nothing compared to what people in Ukraine have been suffering for the past 75 days. And having all of you here is incredibly important. Having all of you go back home, and I would be remiss if I didn't point out all the cool stuff that we've got for you. Please, if you're interested in donating, that's wonderful. You don't have to donate. We've got some beautiful baby sunflowers for you to take home and plant in your garden that will help you remember Ukraine all summer. Heidi back there, Heidi Chimkovich, made some lovely jewelry that she's donated to us. We have some really great things, and in addition to that, we've got students on campus who have done an amazing job. Xavian back there, the Russian and East European Club, together with the Pi Lambda Phi fraternity, did a polar plunge in March at Cheat Lake, and the water was about 42 degrees, and we raised over $1,600 that we added to the fund that Professor Eric Heron and I have been adding to and sending to another mountaineer, a Ukrainian mountaineer, Nazar Boyko, who is currently collecting money and making armored vests, collecting money to buy walkie-talkies to provide to troops and to displaced persons, to buy a Starlink internet connection so that people can have communications within Ukraine. To date, we have raised almost $16,000, and the bulk of that has come from people in this community. And this community has come together for our friends from Ukraine, for our friends in Ukraine, and I hope that you continue to support that. If you're interested, I think Rachel Fetty also has a connection with Catholic Charities in Morgantown. If you're interested in hosting a family, I think a mother and a daughter, Rachel is over there with the Save Lives Close the Skies sign. If you're interested in hosting, Rachel can connect you. But in the meantime, thank you all. Take home what you've heard tonight. Take it home to your family, take it home to your friends, take it home to your social media. Get the word out. Help us raise a little bit more money. Even I know gas is expensive, grocery prices, but we've got some really lovely prizes for you guys just for coming out and for providing this support. Slava Ukraini!
And we have just recently had announced the refugee program that Lisa mentioned, and we have a lot of effort now from another volunteer, Pamela Hinges, who will talk a little bit about Gold, Blue and United. She also has prepared a poem.
Sorry, I wasn't prepared.
Just one moment. In the blink of an eye, just for one moment. The ups can go down. What was fixed becomes broken. Just one moment of hope in a war sown so deep. To the roots of all time and the people it keeps. If we could measure time in any other way, we'd measure by crime and the guilty would pay. To bring end to the suffering, just one moment of peace. But is that enough? For one moment, it flees. In just one moment, a simple glance seeing with our own eyes how many truly look. Just
just one moment of pain is enough to learn. Some see the facts and yet raise no concern. If just for one moment we could all just consider the change we could bring if we stood all together. Despite all our differences, despite all our flaws, can we focus on effect and not just the cause? We have the rights, the freedom, the chance to bring hope to the weary. Together join hands. Look around you, you'll see we have plenty of room. From ridge to ridge top, we continue to bloom. Why can't we share a slice of heaven we see? After all, how's it go? This land was made for you and for me. In a world full of lies, we must stand up in truth, because we could do more than a bill full of jukes. Americans, I ask you, what happens next? Does he take over Ukraine and then he just says, well, that was success, checklist, check. As we stand here today, we take just one moment to honor those lost, those grieved, and the homeless. Those who've been lost, they will sorely be missed. But we know that beside our Father, they sit. Think back to just one moment, one that changed your life. Did that moment bring you joy, or pain, or strife? Just one moment and just another, something amazing happens when they come all together. So let's take this moment and share it as one, to pray for the hurt, those lost, and that justice will come. Like Sergi said, I'm Pamela Hines. I created Gold and Blue United. I started this nonprofit when I met a group of fearless women in Romania who were helping the refugees on the front line who entered Bucharest desperate. We each formed our own nonprofit so that we could come together and help as many people as possible. Now that we're officiated through the state of West Virginia, we'll become a private group sponsor for the Uniting for Ukraine program to be able to get as many people here as we can. This will enable us to sponsor whole families of refugees at once. The opportunity is here, but we can't do it alone. If you'd like to find out how to become a sponsor or join our cause in any way, our website is goldandblueunited.com, and you can find us on all social media platforms. And thank you all for your support and for coming, and may God bless and protect the people of Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you for this effort and message. And the next speaker is Reverend Zach.
Good evening, friends. I bring you greetings on behalf of the Morgantown Interfaith Association, and also to be reminded and remind all of us that indeed God is not indifferent to suffering. In the book of Exodus, God declares, "I've heard the cry of my people. I know their sufferings. Their cries have come to me." These are words, of course, that God delivers to Moses through a burning bush, which is an appropriate symbol for a world that must have seemed like it was on fire to those who were suffering. And that detail that the burning bush was not consumed might symbolize to us that at times it seemed as if there's no end in sight to human suffering. And so we find ourselves in a moment today when the people of Ukraine must feel as if there is no yet end in sight to the suffering of their people and their land. And so we gather tonight to mourn and to grieve and to suffer with you as we implore governing authorities to do everything possible to end this conflict and the crimes being committed. War, we know, is an atrocity in and of itself, but war is never the end of it. During times of war, the worst and basest instincts of the human condition come out into the open. We see scenes of abuse and genocide, as we've seen egregious violations of human rights committed by the Russians on Ukrainian civilians. We condemn these atrocities and demand that those responsible be held to account. War is a force that always dehumanizes us. It reduces the value of human life entrenched in lines of conflict and mutes our shared bonds of humanity. as if there is anything more important than our shared bonds. War inevitably erodes the humanity of the attackers and the defenders, and it leaves a legacy of trauma and wounds, physical, emotional, psychological, on people for generations long after the last bullet is fired. And so the cost of war is incalculable. And we condemn in the strongest terms those who instigate it, those who use it to attack sovereign people. And we condemn those who profit off war and use it as a means by which to accrue wealth and power. And so in these kinds of times, holding and insisting on our humanity and those shared bonds are important, and it does matter. And that is what we do tonight. Together we cry out, "How long, O Lord?" and cry out for peace, for the people of Ukraine, and for a world and a species so insane that it carries the potential for its own annihilation. We pray, may the peace of God win the day, sooner rather than later. And in the words of Mary, the mother of Jesus, from the book of Luke, we cry out, may God scatter over the proud in the imagination of their hearts. May God tear the tyrants down from their thrones and lift up the lowly. May he fill the hungry with good things and send the wealthy away empty. I'd just like to say also, our church at First Presbyterian just down the road, we have a church garden. And so we're going to take one of those sunflowers and we will plant it this Sunday with our community in solidarity with your community as a sign of peace and our solidarity with your suffering. May the Lord bless you and keep you, and may the peace of Christ persist in all our hearts and minds.
Thank you so much. And just a quick reminder that sunflower is our national flower in Ukraine. We really appreciate the demonstration in this beautiful scarf as well. The next item on our agenda is timeless заповедь. It's a testament that will be read by Diana Labai-Ackerman and Valeria Gritsenko in both Ukrainian and English.
So I'll just add that this poem was written by Taras Shevchenko, who was a Ukrainian, born in 19th century into serfdom. So he was a talented painter and poet, and his friends actually bought his freedom and sent him to study to St. Petersburg. And then he came back and lived all his life in Ukraine, documenting Ukrainian suffering. A lot of Ukrainians were serfs and of course were part of the Russian Empire. His art reflects Ukrainian identity. He was jailed and forbidden to write or draw, he was persecuted throughout his life.
Заповіт.
Testament, translated by John Weir.
Як умру, то поховайте мене на могилі, серед степу широкого, на Вкраїні милій, щоб лани широкополі, і Дніпро, і кручі. Було видно, було чути, як реве ревучі.
When I'm dead, bury me in my beloved Ukraine, my tomb upon a grave mound high, amid the spreading plain, so that the fields, the boundless steppes, the Dnieper's plunging shore, my eyes could see, my ears could hear the mighty river roar.
Як понесе з України в синє море кров ворожу, отоді я і лани, і горе все покину, і полину до самого Бога молитися. А до того я не знаю Бога.
When from Ukraine the Dnieper bears into the deep blue sea the blood of foes, then will I leave these hills and fertile fields. I'll leave them all and fly away to the abode of God, and then I'll pray. But till that day, I nothing know of God.
Поховайте та вставайте, кайдани порвіте, і вражою злою кров'ю волю окропіте, і мене в сім'ї великій, в сім'ї вольній, новій, не забудьте пом'янити, не злим, тихим
слово.
O bury me, then rise ye up, and break your heavy chains, and water with the tyrant's blood the freedom you have gained. And in the great new family, the family of the free, with softly spoken, kindly word. Remember, also me.
These are pretty tough words, right? Even today you feel revolutionary power of somebody who lived hundreds of years ago now. That's the power of being a talented, amazing poet. The next speaker is Rabbi Joseph Campbell, who is a dear friend of our community, and we welcome your contribution.
Splendid isolation. America once stood aloof from the conflicts of the old world, but in vain. How can we serve heaven while ignoring corruption on earth? Idols have eyes, but cannot see. Those who trust in them shall become like them. We know God is the source of justice, but justice won't prevail until we lift our hands. Isaiah teaches, free the oppressed, feed the hungry, clothe the naked, house the exile. Then you will feel God's presence. Then God will answer your call. Now is the time to struggle for truth, to pray for peace. If we don't do it, who will? In this third month of war, we are appalled at the carnage of Russia's onslaught, yet inspired by the tenacity of Ukraine's resistance. Today was, for Eastern Europeans, the anniversary of the Allied victory in World War II, a patriotic milestone. Today, Moscow cynically brands Kiev with the slur of fascism. A democracy with a Jewish president is the second coming of the Nazis? That shows the emptiness of Putin's moral cupboard. At this season, we Jews are counting the biblical journey from Egypt to Sinai, which occurred in the spring. We are due at the Mount of Revelation on June 5th. By that date, please God, may humanity join us in reciting, you shall not envy your neighbor. You shall not bear false witness. You shall not steal. You shall not kill.
The next song will be introduced by Morgantown.
Okay, the final song we're going to sing is called Ой у лузі червона калина, which translates in the meadow a red elder rose. The red elder rose has been a symbol of Ukraine since ancient times. This shrub with red berries can be spotted growing across Ukraine, particularly near wells. This song, In the Meadow, a Red Elder Rose, is a Ukrainian patriotic march that was written by the composer Stepan Chernetsky in 1914 in honor and memory of Ukrainian fighters, warriors, the Cossacks, who defended Ukraine in the 15th through 18th century. In the Meadow, a Red Elder Rose offers hope and reassurance that our glorious Ukraine will cheer up, will rise and rejoice. I present to you Ой у лузі червона калина. Please everyone join us. Ой у лузі червона калина похилилася, чогось наша славна Україна зажурилася, а ми тую червону калину підіймемо, а ми нашу славну Україну, гей, гей, розвеселимо. Не жилися, червона калина, маєш білий цвіт. Не журися, славна Україна, маєш вільний вік. А ми тую червону калину підіймемо, а ми нашу славну Україну, гей, гей, розвеселимо. Марширують наші добровольці у кривавий танк, визволяти братів українців з ворожих кайдан. А ми наших братів українців визволимо, а ми нашу славну Україну, гей, гей, розвеселимо. Слава Україні! Героям слава!
Thank you very much for coming here. We appreciate your support, appreciate seeing your faces. Thank you for joining us for this evening, and thank you for your
Get the
efforts.
sunflowers.
And of course, please come over here and take a symbol of Ukraine to your home and nurture it and take care of it. Don't let it die during this time. That would be your task. Thank you so much. And of course, we have also candles.
Oh
So,
yes, candles.
I know.
we will.
I guess that's
We have some matches and candles, so please stay and we'll play some of the traditional Ukrainian music still and join us in conversation.
I'll be right back.
We should go get a